Lapse the steering wheel here. Give me the steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on! Whoa!
You like my bass? You like it?
How the f*** is this possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? From our radio, Fernando Alonso. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down the Haas F1.
I am so annoyed.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 883. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we are going to cover Formula One news and some other things. We always do. We cover other things, you know, if I mean, I mean, it is Grace. She just got back from Austin in the MotoGP race, which was an epic race. So, of course, at some point we'll talk about it. So, but beyond that, we do have to introduce our co-host. You know who it is. She just flew in from Austin, landed in D.C., made it to her house. Her cats have been, you know, motherless for 6 days. They were on her like Velcro. She's pulled the cats off of her and made it to her desk to do this podcast, and it's pretty amazing. It's the lovely, the redoubtable Grace. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. I always joke that cats are like toddlers. Like, right, you walk in the door and at first like, why are you touching me? You abandoned me. Like, I remember when my nieces went through that phase of like, oh, I'm just going to sit at the top of the stairs and stare at you because you left me. How dare you? And then they're like, all right, all's forgiven. Let's be friends. Let's play.
Yeah, it's a little bit of sulking time.
Yeah. There's still this like, you are not forgiven for leaving me.
Yeah. That is true.
Yes.
So that's it's exciting. Well, hey, a huge, before we get started, a huge hello to all of our Patreon supporters that are joining us live for this recording. And we've got several Patreon members in here, and they are awesome, and they are interacting with us and commenting to each other. It's a great community. You too could be in this live audience with us. If you support us on Patreon, you can do that at our website, theparkformay.com, and join our Patreon supporter club. And you can join this audience live along with Dave and Ian and Melton and Fabio and Steven and everybody else in here. And you can chat away. So anyway, welcome to all of you. It's great to have you. I love having you guys during the show. Is this Ziggy?
No, it's Levi. See, it took
see, now Levi jumped up.
Three seconds before somebody showed up.
See, cats. Yeah, cats galore. So we're going to talk about some Formula One news. And, okay, so here's the funny thing, Grace. So, obviously, the big news in this past week is Fernando Alonso signing this big deal, right?
Yeah.
Right? This is the big news. So, I thought it would be funny to go and let AI create a little.
This is not going to be good. However you finish this sentence is not going to be good.
It's not going to be good because I don't speak Spanish. So someone out there, and I know we have listeners that speak Spanish. So somebody who speaks Spanish, please translate this for us, because I thought, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do a little music, a little Spanish guitar, some strings, a kind of dramatic, cinematic sound music. And then I told AI, I wanted it to give me a voiceover of that said, this is Fernando Alonso. That's all I said I wanted to say, right? I didn't say in what language or anything. I just said, give me a voiceover quote that says, quote, this is Fernando Alonso, end quote. That's all I said. So this is what it produced. And somehow I think it's hilarious and fitting. So for all of you that speak Spanish, if it's like horribly offensive, I'm sorry, because it's AI generated. I have no idea what it says. I think it may be just talking about some of my prompts about dramatic string section emotion. I don't know. And I could swear maybe it says that Fernando is either a GP2 engine or a GP2 driver. I don't know. One of the other.
Either way is kind of right. So
Either way,
it's fine.
So without further ado, here it is. This is the AI generated Fernando Alonso theme song now.
En tus oídos, melodía toca. Con guitarra y la orquesta en voz. Dramático en el aire flota. Esto es Fernando Alonso. Las cuerdas vibran. Emociones brotan.
So that's it. It created this whole voiceover in Spanish. I didn't ask for it in Spanish. Created the whole voiceover in Spanish. I have no idea what it says other than Fernando Alonso.
Alonso, very dramatic.
And dramatic. Yeah. And I got that. But so anyway, I have no idea, folks. So if you speak Spanish, give that a listen and let us know what it says. That was pretty funny anyway. So, yes, big news in Formula One.
I don't know. It's hard to top that. Like, we should just end the show now.
I know. We should just end there. That's all you really need to know.
Nothing
Fernando
I have
signed.
is going to be as interesting as whatever that just created.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And the voice was perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, this deep Spanish accent. It was just perfect, So anyway, yeah, big news. Fernando has signed a new extension with Aston Martin through 2026 when he'll be, are you counting, Grace? 45
Yep.
years old. But he says the deal is kind of a lifetime project, and that's led many to believe that there's a post-racing role for him at the team that also may be in the mix, and that's kind of what Lewis Hamilton was looking for, right? At Mercedes,
That's right.
Merck didn't give it to him. Ferrari said they would, so Lewis moved over there. So maybe Fernando got it, said, hey, Lewis wants a post-racing career and role at the team. I'm gonna ask for that. So that's what he said. He said, look, as far as age goes, I'll be the first to raise my hand. If I feel like I've lost my edge or my motivation and drive or my skills, I'll raise my hand and have a blunt conversation with the team and step down. But he said just 5 days ago was probably one of the best races of my career in Japan. So
I'm just going to put this out there. Every human I've ever met, real good at that.
Yeah, they're real good about that, taking self-inventory and introspection.
I'm just saying, it's not really our strength as a group of people,
Right.
or as a species.
Right.
But
right.
all right, I hear you out, Fernando, that you'll let us know. You'll let us know. And don't be using Lancey Boy as your measuring stick either, because that may not also indicate when you should retire.
That's not a good litmus test there.
No. Nope, not at all.
I agree. So here is what he had to say. Quote, I felt that I love too much driving, that I cannot stop at the moment. And I think the sacrifices that you have to make are smaller than the joy of driving and the passion that I have for driving. I breathe Formula One. I live Formula One. I train to be fit to drive Formula One cars. I eat to be fit to drive Formula One cars. And it didn't arrive the moment that I felt, I needed to change the lifestyle. My lifestyle is great. I love what I do, so I will not be happy sitting at home and watching Formula One races because at the moment, I still feel that I should be there. End quote.
So what we learned from that statement is that commas are important.
Yes. Yes. And accurate translations.
That's helpful. To know where the pauses go. But yeah, I mean, of course, but that's also why I think the idea of we're not a good measuring post of our own successes or failures, right? And that this is it. This is what he's been, working towards since he was 2 or 4 or whatever. Yeah. And I think it's going to be real hard to be the person that says, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, I don't think he's there yet. I think he's got at least another, year or two in him. And to me, it just seems like the travel and all that other stuff is what would get to me first. Because that's how I feel, again, just in my own personal life. It's not I mean, my job is not being a Formula One driver, but at some point it's like, I need to travel less. It's just, it wears on you at some point. So I can't.
It's a grind.
Yeah, and that has to be hard. I mean, we were even, being at the MotoGP race, like, so Austin's so big that they can have some of the Moto2 teams in the paddock with the MotoGP teams. And exactly, as soon as the race is over, they're packing up. And even like, and they're out of there before the MotoGP race, which is like 15 minutes after their race, they're ready to go. So, and they're out on an airplane that evening. So I just think that kind of like, I don't know. Although you do get in a routine, I guess, too. But it just seems like that's what would get me before I think my skills would diminish. Knock on wood, right?
Yeah, these guys live out of a suitcase,
Yeah,
And
so
it's gonna be tough.
But I think I think he still has success, and he's finally at a team where it's clicked. I'm not sure because I think so many other people have found the relationship with Lawrence Stroll to be so toxic.
Yeah,
and I think more people have the Otmar Schnafnauer experience, but for somehow Fernando Alonso, those two have just like it's clicked.
Yeah,
and so you keep riding this for a couple more years for as long as you can, and then keep working with the team. I think he would be great as like a David Coulthard or somebody that works with the team, works with the drivers, continues to make them successful. Maybe he can help Lance be more successful on the track. So I think this is a good place for him. I guess it's not really surprising that he re-signed. We were just all waiting for it.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And I think it's a fair point. I mean, honestly, if you listen to Sebastian Vettel kind of mumble lately about missing racing, so this may be a good move. And I suspect Lewis, you guys remember for years Lewis talked about, even when he was in 20s, about he wouldn't be doing this for a long time. He always talked about, he'd be leaving the sport. He was going to be a musician maybe, or a fashion mogul, or an actor, or some other thing that he, had an interest in, that he wanted to be involved in. And yet here he is, 40 and or close to, and decides to sign with Ferrari in a long-term deal. And you think, well, it's one thing when you're late 20s, early 30s to say, yeah, I'm going to go be this or that. But I think even in Lewis's case, whatever programs or organizations that he has and causes he wants to champion, I think he feels that he can do that better when he's associated with Formula One than not. In the end, it's what these guys know best, and it's what they're best at. For Lewis to say, okay, I'm going to go be a musician, right? Well, you didn't spend your whole life honing those chops, and that's not easy, to do. So I think in a long, as they get older, they're like, this is what I do, and this is my job, and this is my industry, and it's what I excel at, and it's what I'm going to stay in. So I could see that. And I think, they've all been doing it since such a young age.
Right. That
to not be doing it is got to be a big void in their life. It's all they've ever known.
Right. And it's such a dedication. Like even if
Commitment.
you dreamed since you were 2 to be a teacher, your parents weren't living out of a van with you so you could race, right? Like, I just think that level of like, it's everything your family has poured into, has been supporting your career. I can't imagine. It's hard enough, moving and leaving friends or, moving away from family, whatever, for us regular people. I think athletes for sure always have to struggle with this. Like, I've been at the peak of this, right? I think that's the other thing they have to get over. Like, they do so well in the coming up stages, and then the first time they don't win something is at the pro level, right? And that's the other big hurdle, is when do you stop doing something? When are you willing to move on for something that, has been your entire dedication every morning? Yeah,
it's always got, and it's not just Formula One. I'm sure Valentino Rossi really weighed it. I'm sure stick and ball sports athletes weigh that.
For sure.
As they get older, their arm can't pitch as fast or as hard.
No,
those kind of things happen.
If you ever read Paper Lion, that book was written in the late 70s, right, about football players. But so much of that, like the humanness of it, is still very relevant. And he spends a whole chapter talking about, what careers did football players play? after they're done being football players, and then a lot of them go into insurance because it kind of fits their thinking. It fit with their routine, but just that became part of it. Is that as players retired, that they sort of like mentored other retiring players because it's such a struggle to figure out. Because football is that same way. This is something you've dedicated your entire life with since you were playing Pee-wees at 4, and now you're 25, 30, and you're like your body's crushed and you can't do it anymore. So. I can't imagine, but I think that he isn't, unlike Valentino Rossi, he isn't on his downswing yet. It seems to be working, and, the team is competitive, and they're happy with him, and he's happy with them. Somehow the magic finally happened at his last team, so you keep riding that, Alonso.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what it does do. It takes Fernando off the list, right, for Red Bull, Mercedes, Audi, anyone else who thought they might like to have a conversation with him.
They might have liked having that conversation. Nobody else should sign him. I just don't see how any other team that was really going to work. But.
Yeah. I don't, there certainly was speculation in the press, and one of them was, about Red Bull, but I don't think Christian Horner's ever been a huge Alonso fan. I think he's had options for Alonso in the past, and I kind of felt like he thought Alonso was a dynamic that he didn't want in the team.
Dynamic is a nice way of putting it for the record.
Yeah,
I just, right, like I think that's just going to be a nightmare. Plus, why would you're always looking forward as a team. You already have Max Verstappen, who is in the middle of his career. God, I mean, he's like, 26? It feels weird to say he's in the middle of his career or whatever. But so, Max is not the new kid, and he's not ready to retire. You already have somebody in that place. Why would you hire in somebody older? That just doesn't make any sense for your... If I was running a team, I wouldn't want to pick up somebody who at most has 3 years. If Alonso's racing another 5 years and is competitive, that's like a Festivus miracle. So even if we give him 5 years at most, which seems crazy, I don't know why you would want that. I would bring in some 18, 19, 20-year-old for my junior team to race with Max, not somebody who's older, because that's not where my hole is in my team. Yeah, I mean, I think they should look at Albon. I think they should look at Liam Lawson. If Daniel Ricciardo can turn his performance around, maybe. Yep. Those kind of things. But Alonso, I don't feel like was a realistic option. I'm also curious. I'm not so sure Toto's impression of Alonso either. Not sure about that one. Yeah, at some point, like I work in a small field. At some point, you should never burn bridges, right, when you leave jobs. But for sure, I work in a small field. They work in a small field, right? Like, sure. There aren't that many teams that if he didn't work out with Aston Martin, pretty soon retirement is all he's got because there's no other team he can work with. Right. So, I don't know that there's anybody. He's not going back to Ferrari, and I don't see McLaren. I'm going back to McLaren again for the third time's the charm.
Choice. I think it's a logical choice. Stay at Aston Martin. You get a good relationship there, right? That process. Yeah. The team's happy to have you. Everything's fine. I think Red Bull would have been a question mark in my mind. I don't know that they would have made an offer, and I'm not sure Mercedes would either. So I think it's the obvious choice for Alonso. There's some that said, he could go anywhere he wanted. I don't think that's true. I don't think all those options were open to him in reality.
No, and everybody is always going to say that.
Yeah.
Alonso's always going to say, I talked to the other 9 teams on the grid, and all 9 teams are going to say, I talked to Alonso. That's all. It could be Kimi Räikkönen. They're all going to say that, right? So you can't ever take that. And of course, he is a world champion. He is successful. He could go to any team, but should he go to any team, right? Like, I'm qualified for a lot of jobs. It doesn't mean I should take them, right?
Right. Well, and maybe the more pressing issue at this point is what does the team do with that second seat? Is it Lance's for as long as he wants it? Or is Mike Crack and the team really finding Carlos Sainz or other more attractive packages to team with Alonso? So you've got Alonso. Is Lance a good teammate with Alonso, since Alonso's kind of your focus? Would it make more sense in my mind if they could pull it off? I think getting Carlos would be huge.
I think it depends on what they see their future as.
Yeah.
So if Alonso retires in 3 to 5 years, would that promote Lance to being their number one driver and they bring in a young driver behind him? Or would they also be getting rid of Lance? Because if that's what drives, again, just like with Red Bull, that drives that decision of what your sort of 5-year plan is for your team. And they don't seem to be getting rid of Lance. And, you know, I want to say it was Motorsports. Somewhere I was reading, you know, they were talking about how Lance's skills really in car setup. So they're not as concerned that he doesn't give them the on-track performance because he's giving them a lot of off-track performance. Well, if that's the case, then I could see maybe keeping Lance. But I've been questioning keeping Lance for a long time now. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's there. But it has to be something because it can't just be my dad owns the team. Even your dad at some point has to realize you have to go somewhere else. So there has to be something.
That's been my concern is the amount of points that they're leaving on the table.
Right.
You know, that the team needed. But anyway, watch this space. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And it works
who
well.
they pick.
Maybe that's it too, right? Like Lance and Alonso work well together. I mean, I think we all saw how
they do.
How Alonso and Ocon were great friends until they weren't.
Yeah.
And that didn't go so well. So, I mean, maybe don't upset the apple cart until Alonso retires.
Yeah, if you've got a harmony there, you know, maybe it's a good fit.
If it's working for you and it's keeping, you know, I mean, I think they've already done better than I would have expected at this point. So keep it.
Well, and the next thing I would get to thinking was, you know, now that the ink has dried on the new deal for Alonso, you know, there's no mystery that Honda will be the lump in his car shoving him around the track. And that had many folks wondering how Honda felt about giving Alonso an extended contract, given Alonso's criticism on the engine maker in the past, remember? So back when McLaren were struggling with Honda, Alonso came on the radio during a moment of peak frustration and called the Honda engine a GP2 engine. That did not go down well with Honda at all, as you can imagine. And also, can I blow my own horn? I don't do it enough. I'm gonna this time. I said at the time when all this was going on, you said, we talked about it at the time. You said, you know what? I think Honda should leave and go to Red Bull because I think Red Bull could pull that relationship off where McLaren isn't pulling it off. And I think they can do it. And they did, right? So I think it's, you know, that was my crystal ball moment.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. So having said that, because at the time, Red Bull had torched their relationship with Cyril and Renault, right? Mm-hmm. And they were desperately looking for an engine supplier. And I said, Honda should go over there and work with them. And they did, and it worked. Anyway, Honda's Koji Watanabe said this about Alonso, quote, when I worked with him from 2015 to 2017, it was a very difficult situation for both Honda and the team. It was a particularly frustrating period in our history, and there were times when our relationship was strained. But I think we've become stronger because we overcame that frustration. But I think we have become... Oh, I read that. Alonso has also been very active since then. I'm glad that we can overcome that painful experience together and fight together for victory once again. I hope that we can aim for the championship together and win together. End quote. A very taking the high road there on that.
I mean, I don't think they're blind. So should Alonso, first of all, what we hear on the radio, you know, right, we all know that they've been back in the garage talking about these things, right? This is not the first time he's voiced concerns to people who be, you know, it's just the first time we heard him voicing it, right? So, and it's not like Honda was like, we provided you the world's most perfect engine, and I don't know what the heck happened. They're well aware that those weren't good years for them either. Yeah. And so I know we've made it, 25 minutes before I mentioned MotoGP, but I think that this story to me is very similar, but handled differently with Marc Marquez and his relationship with Honda, right? Whereas that bike is trash.
Right.
And Mark is, even this weekend, was still very much like, yeah, I had to leave that bike. They were trash. but they were my entire life, and I want to come back. And I just can't spend the years of my life, because my career is short, waiting for them to not be trash anymore. And so I'm going to like go ride for Ducati for a year and hope they get it together. And so Alonso could have said something more like that. Again, it's an engine. It's not the team. It's not who he's raced with. You know, it's not like Lewis Hamilton and McLaren or something like that. So, but the idea is that Alonso could have come out and said something more like, they're trash and I'm tired of it. And instead he said GP2 engine. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not like Honda said to Marc Marquez, we gave you a great bike. Why can't you ride it? They're aware that they're not giving him a good bike. And Honda is aware that they had engine problems. It wasn't just Alonso. And we all know, and they know, that if Alonso can make that car and that engine and that package get to 7th, us mere mortals in Formula One are lucky if we can get it to like 15. So it's really meaningful. Maybe that isn't the best way to have been sharing that information, Fernando Alonso, but I'm sure he felt frustration because nobody was doing anything about it. So out it came. It's the, Rossi kicking Marquez. It was just frustration, and there's nothing left, and out it came. But the truth is still there. Yeah, right. Yeah, and, they got to do something. It was interesting because the article I read about it said that Aston Martin, before signing him, they actually went to Honda and said, hey, you guys have any issues with us extending this deal with Alonso? And Honda said, no, we don't. We're professionals. They have, and they've been doing, they're everywhere in motorsports, right? I just think that you wouldn't, just like the individual, just like Alonso as an individual wouldn't survive in a sport like this if he wasn't able to go, that was yesterday, I'm only as good as my race tomorrow. I'm only as good at this moment. I'm always thinking about, the present. If Alonso wasn't able to do that, he wouldn't be able to survive. Neither would any of these companies, right? They have to be able to say, that happened, we learned from it, we're moving forward. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Or no, they would never be able to survive in motorsports either. Yeah. Yeah, good point. So we got Alonso, long-term deal, Aston Martin, Honda's fine with it. Honda's coming on board, being engine supplier in 2026. Things looking up for Aston Martin, and I wish them the best. I think Lawrence is doing a great job bringing in, a serious engine manufacturer. You got serious talent, and Alonso is making the right moves. So good for Mike Crack and the whole team. I'm happy for that team and think they're doing great. So keep it up. This weekend, folks, marks the return of Formula One to the Chinese Grand Prix. And we have not been there since 2019 due to COVID. So this has been a 4-year hiatus, if you will, since we've been to this track. Not to worry. The track has been resurfaced, so hopefully the asphalt will be in good nick, and that'll be good. What's more troubling, though, for the teams anyway, is the lack of meaningful data from the circuit. These are new regulation cars, new asphalt. Most of all of the old data is out the window or irrelevant. They don't really have that to weigh on. And to add to that entire complex decision matrix on how to handle a race weekend, they happen to pick this one as a sprint race weekend. And that means even less free practice to which to dial in their cars. So this could be a complete crapshoot for the teams on how to set it up. And it was interesting because they asked Max, I think it had Tip Autosport, but they asked Max Verstappen his thoughts on this being a sprint race this weekend. And he said it's not great to do that because when you've been away from the track for quite a while, I think you never know what you're going to experience. So it would have been better to have a normal race weekend there. On the other hand, it probably spices things up a bit more, and that's maybe what they want, what they like to see. But purely from a driving and performance perspective of the sport, I think it's not the smartest thing to do. We'll see when we get there, end quote. He's not wrong. No, I think that's exactly why they're doing it.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you.
I don't think that's a Delphic Oracle kind of material there. Of course, you're like, what's going to mess it up? That isn't something we have to do crazy. That's something that already exists, right? Like, let's have a sprint race. You haven't been there 4 years? Let's not have any practice.
Yeah, and that's what I put in my notes. I said, this reminds me, you remember years ago, and some of you longtime listeners and longtime F1 fans will remember they came out with Pirelli HD tires. And then there was the first year. And there was some criticism. Well, they're kind of conservative on their compounds. And then the next year or year after, Pirelli tried to get really cute on how they did the construction of those tires with very narrow windows. And they tried to outthink the teams in getting the cars. And then they had that big blowout at the British Grand Prix, 3 cars having tires delaminate, and all of that stuff happened. They were trying to get in my impression at the time, when we reviewed that, I said they were trying to get too involved in the sport as an impact element or a construct of the sport. And I didn't like it at that point in time. And so that's what it reminded me of when they did that. And that only really ended in tears, which leads me to say that in my mind, F1 needs to stop the chutes and ladders antics and realize that the teams spend millions to race at perfection. So throwing random curveballs at them to try to, quote, spice things up is a little more than a construct on the sport. I mean, if we're going to do that, why not sprinklers or caltrops or random oil slick buttons or an ejection seat? I mean, let's just, let's go race. And the other side of that, if something goes very odd with this weekend where they didn't get any running, nobody knows what's going on, everybody's all over the place, it's a weird result and a weird race, well, that doesn't help the Chinese Grand Prix brand either, right? So I hope I'm wrong. I'm optimistic. It's a great track. The drivers like it. So let's hope the teams get on top of things. And this will be a big nothing burger, and it's nothing to look at, and it's no big deal. But we'll have to wait and see. But I do think it's odd timing to do a sprint race.
I think, yes, from our perspective and from a driver's perspective, perhaps. But yeah, I can totally see why. As soon as that was like, I think thought 1 was, let's bring back China. Thought 2 was, and add a sprint race, right? Like, I can see how that as a promoter, that's exactly what you would do. And anything you can do to kind of keep it spicy. I'm going to add impact element. I'm going to start using that at work. Oh, come on. This is just an impact element.
It's an impact element.
That's great. Little impact elements to the meeting. It keeps it spicy for everybody.
Yeah, it's an impact element.
But yeah, I when I saw that quote from Max Verstappen, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
It's not a great idea, but a great idea.
Right. Depending on the context you view it as.
Yeah, right.
It's a parallax. Yeah.
Correct. And so, and Max is very like straightforward, dry. Yeah, from my perspective, it's stupid. But from your perspective, I can see why it's a good idea.
Yeah, there's other ways to do this without being a construct. There was an article I didn't get a chance to read today that was out there about Adrian Newey's comments about the future engine of Formula One in 2026. I haven't read that article yet, but I'm dying to read that and get what his thoughts were.
GP2 engines for everybody.
GP2 engine. Yeah, I thought what's so weird is I thought I had that soundbite, and I was looking earlier today, and I just could not find it. All I could find is Alonso laughing. So
that's a great one too.
That's all right. Let's see what else. What else is in the news? Well, Haas F1 in the news this week. When Gunther Steiner left. Gunther is like Madonna. He's reached that. You don't even need to Steiner. You just say Gunther. He's on a one-name basis at this point. So when Gunther left, it was said in the press and sort of intimated by him that Gene Haas didn't want to spend money on a team until he saw progress. Now, at the time, I commented on that, suggesting that that's not exactly how F1 works these days. But the notion still seems to be somewhat true. Maybe not as cut as dried as Gunther and the press made it sound, but it does seem to be somewhat true, according to the new boss, Komatsu, who said this, quote, "I got appointed officially on 10th of January, right? Gene's message from day one was absolutely clear. He said he's got money, he is ready to invest it, but we've got to show him we can use the money responsibly, efficiently. He doesn't want to see the waste. There's a reason he's a billionaire, right? He doesn't like to waste money, right? So when I looked at it, then there are so many areas we can improve. So that's why I wasn't too worried about his initial message. Come on, you guys need to show me you're using my money responsibly, then get to a certain position, and then I think about the investment. But I know for a fact that he'll really invest when we get to that stage, and already he's commissioned a new motorhome for next year, which is not a small investment. So we're doing that. End quote.
I just think that, my armchair quarterbacking here, Komatsu is a lot easier of a personality to deal with than Gunther Steiner.
I agree.
They could do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know that I have more to say than that.
Ian says, Gunther, weird GTFO.
I know, right? Like, I just think that, right? What are you going to do? And that Gunther, it seems, I guess, most of the insight I have also is from Drive to Survive for the last couple of years. But, like, there's always this, like, no, Gene, you have to spend money to make money. And Komatsu just is like, all right, this is what we have. This is what we'll work on. And we'll just keep going forward with that. And he'll give us more money when we're ready for more money.
Yeah. So
it's just a different perspective.
It is. Okay, so look, I'm going to try to, I want to be fair about it. Fair enough. Gene, let's just be very candid. Gene's a smart guy. He's nobody's idiot. He is a billionaire, multimillionaire, whatever. He's a smart guy. No one wants to throw good money away. But now in hearing Komatsu talk about this, I think for me it all comes down to what are Gene's KPIs, right? What's his key performance index or indicators? What my point, and what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with KPIs and in the business world or whatever, is those are the milestones he's marking. So what are those milestones or the KPIs he's using to determine his investment level and the timing of those investments? Is going from last place to 15th, if they finish in 15th, does he start chucking money in it? Is that worth the investment? What about 18th? Is it just going up a couple spots? Is that progress? Does he start chucking money in it? Or is he sitting here thinking, well, when you're 10th in the championship, then I'll invest? Well, that's a whole different level, right? Trying to get from last on the grid to 10th, that's a big, big ask.
And
right?
so I think that Gunther tried to argue that Gene's goals were out of line. Right?
Yeah.
You're asking me to get this team to 5th. We will never be 5th. So stop asking me to make this team 5th. We'll never be there, right?
Right.
And of course, Gene would say, that's your job. You make us 5th, right? I'm making that up. I don't know what number it is. But that seems to be the message you got from Steiner, right? That, he's putting an impossible, KPI monkey around my neck, and we're never going to get there. And that just seems to not be Komatsu's, at least his public approach doesn't seem to be as abrasive about what Gene wants or doesn't want. But I also think that Gene has to have watched the sport, has to be aware how Formula One works, right? Like,
yeah, he's not an idiot. I mean, he's a smart guy.
I guess. I mean, I don't know that just because he has money that makes him smart. I don't know. But I just don't think that I am a casual fan who's been watching for 25 years, and I could tell you that you're never going to be 10th, Haas. I'm not an insider. I'm not living in that sport. I'm not Toto Wolff, whatever. But you're not going to make that. Not
without the right investment, the right facilities, build your chassis without.
Look
the
at
right
Aston
employees.
Martin, right?
Yeah. Look at the difference between what Lawrence has poured into that
Correct.
program versus what Gene has.
Right. So that's the thing. It's like, right. Well, why can't you be like Aston Martin? Well, why can't you give me money like Aston Martin? Right. So
Yeah, right.
what I can't believe is that whether or not Gene is smart or not, I can't believe that he's looking at Formula One and expecting it to be the same turnaround as NASCAR is.
I agree, Grace, and that's why I'm
just
saying.
dumb, and I can't believe that he's that dumb because all they do is
Right.
watch the sport, and I'm like, that's dumb. Don't think that.
That's why I think it's really important. I mean, I would love to know what the KPIs are. I mean, the other side of that is that it's one thing to come out and say that you'll invest when you can show you're using the money responsibly. Maybe the implication there is that Gunther wasn't, right?
Right.
Okay, whether he was or wasn't, it's neither here nor there for me. But what are the KPIs that you've established for Komatsu? How much of that investment comes in at that time, and what is the timing of that? And what does that look like? And who architects the plan for the use of those resources, right? And how we're going to apply those resources. We're just going to pay off Delara and ask them to build a better chassis next year? Or we're going to build our own and build an autoclave and a wind tunnel and
Right.
do all the stuff that Aston Martin's doing to win. And so I think that's the whole crux of this, is to right-size the expectation. To your point, you're never going to be 5th, 10th by just being frugal. And I also understand the concept of it's a balance of revenue versus expense. I get it. It's a business. And there's not a lot of folks that like to invest ahead of revenue. There are times you do invest ahead of revenue for sure, and R&D and a lot of other elements of business that you do, but it needs to be justified. You need a business case review for doing so based upon the amount of prize money they're getting, the sponsorship money, how much cash out of Gene's pocket has to come out of this. Do I want to invest in that, invest ahead of revenue? I would tell you in Formula One, I think I don't know of a team that hasn't been in a position that's had to invest ahead of revenue.
And that's what doesn't make sense to me, right? Because again, I assume you and I sitting here in Podland, if this makes sense to us, that if what you're saying makes sense to us, I don't know how Gene doesn't see that same message, right?
Yeah.
And that if that's what you want, if you want a cat to be a dog, don't get a cat, get a dog. Stop trying to make your cat be a dog, right? If you want something, there's a way to even invest in some other sport and maybe get that. Buy a soccer team, buy a baseball team. I don't know. But that's not how it works in Formula One. So you're always going to be disappointed if you're just trying to make your dog be a cat. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Ian...
And I can't believe that's what he wants. It
Yeah,
doesn't make
Ian,
any sense to me.
one of the Patreon supporters, said he's halfway through Gunther's book, and he said that Gunther said that Gene has a 5-year plan, so that takes us through 2026. If that's true, Ian, then I don't know why you would have a 5-year plan unless you were trying to... How does that look? It's not a case of Formula One still being the same size it was when he joined, so he's trying to get made whole before he backs out, because it's grown exponentially. But that growth is not sustainable, and it's not going to hang in there. I don't think it's going to hang in there for 5 years, if I'm perfectly blunt. So for me, it would make more sense for Gene to sell to Michael Andretti. If he's got a 5-year exit plan, then just do a 2-year and sell out to Andretti and let Andretti hit the ground running in 2026. I mean,
Make everybody mad while you're at it. That's great.
I mean, what does it matter to Gene? He's going to take the payout. He makes the money. It was a good investment while he did it. It just makes sense to me. Why wait for 5 years and wait for the viewership numbers to drop, the overall prize money, the value of your assets start to get a little more realistic and come down a little bit? I don't know.
Plus, Komatsu's been with the team since the beginning as well. So
yeah,
he it's not like they brought him in he's not like an Otmar Schnafnauer that they brought in to run the team now. He's been there. He's been Gunther's number 2 all through this. So he's well aware of what's going on here as well.
Yeah.
And he could have also been like, fine, Gunther's going, I'm going, right? There has to be some reason,
Right.
unless it's just boatloads of money, which doesn't seem likely, that he's also willing to stay.
Yeah, you're right. He's been there for a long time. I mean,
He knows exactly what he's getting
been
into.
in the back putting cheese in the mouse traps. I mean, he knows where they're at. You know,
Yes.
he knows what's going on.
Yes.
I agree.
Because that's one of my favorite screen captures. I think it's the first season of Drive to Survive where it's, Steiner telling Komatsu, like, I make the decisions of this team and what I say goes and this is not a democracy and I won't make a vote. And you see Komatsu just like, I guess. Which is really the expression he has through the whole thing is like, okay, sure. Like, he's just like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing now,
Is that how this goes? Or
Yeah,
okay.
I guess, okay. So, I don't know. But I just think that to me is also telling that there is some understanding here because that he could have also walked. Because, I mean,
Yeah, he could
Komatsu,
have.
even being low at the bottom of the barrel in Formula One is worth a lot in other people's barrels, I guess, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say, right? Like, he knows stuff. He's in Formula One. He knows stuff. He's gained stuff from being in Formula One. He could easily go to somewhere else if he wanted to, or to another team and be successful.
Right.
So the fact that he's staying with the ship also must be meaningful as well. There it is, the Steiner boat.
The Steiner boat. Sorry. For those
Captain
listening,
of the
I
boat.
showed a picture of Gunther and his boat on the
Yeah.
YouTube, so you have to go to YouTube and watch it.
Yeah.
Well, time will tell. Who knows? Who knows? All right, well, let's do some Alvin's Cats. I mean, it seems apropos. Yes, Grace. I gotta tell you, Grace, I know what your Alvin's Cats session is going to be about. It's going to be about MotoGP, and I watched the race, and
As you
wow,
should.
what a race. I honestly thought it was going to be a case of, does anybody have anything for Mark Marquez?
Well, I think that was
Crushing.
But I will say so. We brought the premier tickets because it's hot
Yeah.
and we're old, and so I have also argued that I wish there was some way that you could get the suite experience, but have actual seats and be able to get to them, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the problem is because the whole day is stacked. So even if we wanted to go sit in, turn 7 or someplace else,
Right.
you can't get there from your suite fast enough without missing something. And so, and that's always been my complaint at every track. Like, I wish there was more sort of air-conditioned shade somewhere and some water. Because I think that's the other thing, too. Like, this is the first time I think I've ever left a race and I haven't been, every day, have a case of water in the car because you're just dehydrated by the end of the day.
Chortle.
Because you've been outside in the sun for 8 hours, right? And water is, $4 a bottle. And so
It's
anyway.
the giver of life.
So, but anyway, so we did. But that was, so one of the benefits of having the premier tickets was that we got meet and greets with old man's Johann Zarco, who does look just as old in real life as he does in person, I'll let you know. But he was great. His interview was great. And then Alex Friend and then Mark Marquez. And so, somebody asked that question and then it was just that it wasn't a question. They just made a statement. They were like, I don't have a question. I'm just glad to see you happy. We're just all glad to see you smiling. And he was dancing after qualifying. And it was just whatever, sure, we'd all love to have you at Honda. We love that story. We totally get that. But we're all just glad that you're happy. And that you're smiling again, and you just don't seem terribly miserable. And that was true. Even after he crashed, he's still taking it as, we're figuring it out, right?
They had a brake
learning
problem
things.
or something, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's still at the it's a new project. We're still working things out. It's okay. We'll learn from that. Now, come race 19, it may be a whole different story. But right now, at race number 3, he's still in a space of we're still working on it.
Man, Vinales' pace, even if Mark he took the lead, even if he remained up there, I just don't know that he could have held Vinales off.
I tell you, I was trying to explain this to Flip. So I've been watching MotoGP for a long time, but Flip's only recently started watching it. And he's like, why? And he started coming into it now with, both Aleix and Maverick having success with Aprilia. And I'm like, I can't. if you take how I feel about McLaren, that's how I feel about Maverick Vinales. Like, I want so bad, but I can't. It's just heartburn and disappointment. And every time I'm like, Maverick's going to do it, and I can't. It's just, it's going to take me a lot more than 3 races in a season before I'm going to be willing to be like 100%, not because I don't want it, but because, I can't, that burn is hard. Right? Just like being a McLaren fan. And every time you'd be like, Grace, they're doing really well. Are they? I don't know. Come back in like 12 more races and we'll talk about their success. It's just a hard pill to swallow when you've had that kind of up and down roller coaster with a team or a rider. But so, absolutely. It was a great race. And I thought all 3 races were great. My boy, David Alonso, because I am also pro anybody named Alonso, also won his race. So I think it was cool. It was a cool experience as always. And let's see. So I had a couple stories. I was trying to think of like what are some stories I could share that aren't just like, your mainstay stories of MotoGP, because you all have eyes and you watch that. But it's a good race. Go back and watch it. And so first I was thinking, I had mentioned the birds in Australia. The birds in Texas are ginormous. The grackles, they're huge. They're these huge black birds, and they're everywhere. They're in the airport. They were just like living their lives, and they're huge. And it was just like they were not as brave as the birds in Australia, but they were pretty big risk takers as well, and were loud and everywhere. So I just wanted to note that as well. I had posted a picture. There was like, one of those like autograph places where they sell like autograph, like the one I have in Volanta, right? Those places that sell those. And so I had taken a picture of, because when we came in around the corner, we saw it was a Aston, race suit. And I was like, oh, maybe it's Alonso. No, it's Lancey. And so we sent Todd a picture of me like, and we posted it on Facebook like, oh, it's Lancey. Like, I know what Todd's getting for Christmas, the Lancey suit. Yeah. But so they were also selling, like knee sliders and stuff. And so then I noticed that they had Ben Spies bobbleheads. Now, Ben Spies hasn't raced for like, 10 years.
Yeah, I was going to say 10 years or more.
So I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, how much are the Ben Spies bobblehead? And he's like, $20. I'm like, sold. So now I too own my very own Ben Spies bobblehead.
Awesome.
Because first of all, I'm like, he had like 10 of them. Like, it has to cost him more to ship these bobbleheads from race to race than $20 a bobblehead. I was like, I can't believe you still have these. I can't believe you're carrying them around.
That's hilarious.
But we also joked that when Flip was going to propose to me, right? He knew this was happening, right? I didn't want anything public, right? I'm like, it could be a public-ish place. Like, if we're at the park, that's fine, but I really don't want the, like, no jumbotrons, no restaurants, no, like, I don't, that's not my style. I don't want that. And I said, because if you do it on a jumbotron, I'm saying no, and I'm walking away. I'm telling you, don't do it. Like, I've made this clear. That's not who I am. So, hi, Levi. So anyway, so he had told me that our hard drives had all failed on the computers. And so when the guy came, he had to sign for it. But he was signing for my ring. I thought he was signing for the hard drives. So I was like, oh, he's going to be upstairs. He'll be busy fixing the hard drives. I'm going to watch the MotoGP race. I can have an hour to myself. I'll just watch the race. No interruptions. It'll be great. He goes upstairs. He comes right back downstairs again because it's my ring and he's going to propose to me. So we joke that there were only 3 people at our engagement, him, me, and Ben Spies, because that happened to be who was on TV at the time of the MotoGP race.
Oh,
so
funny.
It was also a funny story to also have, Ben Spies bobblehead was that...
Ben Spies was a critical part of your marriage.
That is correct. So
I bet Ben would be happy to know that. You should write him.
Apparently he's
Dear
still...
Casey Kasem.
Apparently he's still... he's a team principal in not AMA. I think it was a Moto America team. So... for Graham Rahal's team. So I was like, I didn't, because I was like, what, it's been a while. Like, again, these are from his 2011 win at Aston. I'm like, I'm going to have to email this guy. Like, how long have you been holding on to these? Because he had like a Casey Stoner which makes sense. Casey Stoner, that makes sense. Like carrying around Sebastian Vettel bobbleheads, that makes sense. But Ben Spies, that's like, I mean, it's meaningful to me, and I'm a Ben Spies fan, but I don't know why other people would want that. So anyway, that was a randomly interesting fact.
It's like having a whole bunch of Robert Kubica bobblehead dolls.
Yeah, exactly. I was like Esteban Ocon. Like there's some sort of like
I
a
like
good
Robert,
talent.
but it's.
But why do you have those?
Why do you have 10 Robert Kubica bobblehead dolls in 2024?
Correct. Why do you still have those?
Yeah.
And so when he was like $20, I was like, well, you can't pass that up. I thought he was going to say a lot more for some reason.
Right.
I will also put out there that if you have the MotoGP, so they do a hero walk. All right, Levi, you're going to have to hop down. Hold on a second. All right. They do a hero walk, right, where they make a U, and they bring the riders around, they sign autographs. They do that in Formula One. They do it in lots of other sports, right? And they do a little interview with Jack Appleyard while they're there. And so if you watch the MotoGP riders on Sunday, Flip and I on Saturday had wore, the Napoleon Dynamite vote for Pedro shirts for Pedro Acosta, because that was like a funny overlap for like 4 people that are either of the age to remember Napoleon Dynamite as a movie and get the Pedro Acosta reference. And so he comes out to sign. He walked right past us. Like he didn't sign anybody near us. So then I just kept holding up the shirt. And so because we weren't on Saturday, the walk was on Sunday. So I brought it with me for him to sign it. So all you can see in the background is me holding up the shirt through the whole thing. So we posted on Facebook. It's now my, my background on everything. So it was pretty funny that maybe he didn't sign it, but everybody now has seen that I was there.
Yeah, I posted it too. Yeah, Pedro offers you his protection.
That's right, exactly. But we got so many. We had rider gear all weekend, but we got a lot of compliments for that.
Awesome.
We did see a couple other people while walking around on Friday wearing Vote for Pedro shirts too. But it was awesome. That's right.
Do the chickens have large talons?
Tina, come eat your breakfast. It was just it was great. So bring back Napoleon Dynamite and Vote for Pedro Acosta. So
cool.
It'll take some time. I'll get that signature, but. Yeah, it was a good time.
Cool.
I recommend it. And go to MotoGP. If you were even thinking about it, go now while there's no traffic, because there's literally no traffic. It was weird.
Yeah, that is weird. That's awesome. Yeah.
So, because Formula One is their biggest event, so don't go to the Formula One race. Go to the MotoGP race.
It was a great race. It really was.
And go now before it becomes popular, as it should have been for 10 years now. But
yeah.
It'll be hard to get anything.
Let's see. We ready for some no shit headlines? First one up: billionaire F1 star to inherit stunning £160 million super yacht with movie theater and spa. Any idea who we're talking about? Billionaire F1 star to inherit.
Nico Rosberg?
Lance Stroll.
Oh. What?
What? I read that. I was like, what? Okay, wait a minute. So his dad's a billionaire. I don't know that Lance is. And an F1 star, that's taking creative liberties, is it not? He's an F1 driver. From Lawrence.
That's not inheriting.
Was he going to off his dad?
That's what I think. I think of inheritance as somebody died, they gave you a yacht. That's why that's not who came. I'm like,
Lawrence could live to be 180. That yacht could be, toast by then.
You know what that is? I know in my family, when I turned 16, I got my mom's beater car and she got a new car. That's what this sounds like.
This could be Lawrence's beater yacht.
Right.
This could be the little boat.
I got a Camry. That's what I got when I turned 16.
Yeah.
Lance gets, 160 million pound, super yacht with a movie theater and a spa. It's like a Camry, but
Lance
for rich
gets
kids.
the dinghy, and then Lawrence has the big boat. Yeah.
Correct.
Makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Next headline: Ryan Reynolds' F1 team released statement on sale rumors after tough start to season. What do you think Alpine said? They said, hell no, the team's not for sale under any circumstances. That's what they said. Hey, and kudos to Wrexham for advancing back-to-back. I asked Paul, I said, is that seems
normal?
Rare or uncommon? He goes, it's almost unheard of to advance, twice, and now they're in League One or whatever they call it. So, way to go, Ryan.
Ryan, I know you may not have watched this sport, unlike I assume that Gene has, but maybe you should have watched this sport and
We could have told you where to put that money.
Yeah, not Renault. And really, any other of the 9 teams on the grid would have been a good shot.
Yep.
That's the
Just
last
saying.
place
Just
I'd put any of my money.
I meant to put the headline with Ralph Schumacher getting all kind of chippy about James Vowles. I thought that was an odd comment.
It was a comment. It was weird. And it was just like, Ralph Schumacher. JV gets like that sometimes too.
He does every once in a while. You get like diarrhea of the mouth, and I'm thinking,
We know
sit,
who you
sit back
are.
down and have a chocolate chip cookie. I don't know what you're talking about here. Come on.
Yeah, right?
This is like his second season. I don't think the team's all, the ownership's all pissed off with James Vowles because they're trying to get their sea
They
legs
are.
over there. It's a long
Thankful.
process, and I think James right-sized
That
that
guy.
expectation. Yeah.
He knows exactly what he's doing. And I think he is very frank about it, which is what you want. You want hopes and dreams, but you want them to be realistic, right?
Yeah. And his are.
And
Let's see. Next one, Red Bull sale not ruled out as Michael Andretti gets new chance to buy F1 team. What are we talking about there? Well, Helmut Marko not ruling out a possible sale of Visa Cash App RB. And you never know. Maybe Michael Andretti could pony up the money to do that. What's also interesting this past week is that the Andretti group opened up their new HQ in the UK. They have a brand new headquarters in the UK, their Formula One shop there. And then a news story came out and said they're planning on getting into F2 and F3. And Michael said, with what we're doing with Cadillac, the investments that we're making, it's going to be impossible for F1 to say no to us at some point.
They will keep saying no to you, though.
I think they will.
And yet they will.
Yeah.
I need the like Arrested Development voiceover. And yet they did.
Reminds me of Kenneth Branagh in that HBO movie, Conspiracy. It's about the meeting at Wannsee of the Nazis and the final solution. And it was interesting. It's almost like did you ever see the movie 12 Angry Men?
Yes.
Okay, it's very much in that vein. It is a wonderful piece of acting and everything with Kenneth Branagh and Colin Firth and all these guys in it. And there's this moment when one of the doctors stands up and says, no, that's not what we're doing. I have been assured by the Fuhrer that that's not going to happen. And Kenneth Branagh's character looked at him and goes, and you will continue to be. And he goes, oh, okay. I get it. Yeah. So it's one of those, you will continue to be told no.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens anyway. That's funny. So that's okay. We do have a mailbag before we bail out. Real quick.
got mail.
Yeah.
Can I tell one more story before we go to mailbag? Because I don't want to forget, and it's timely. So just because when we had gone to Austin, the three of us, the first year, whatever that was, like 10 years ago, which seems like yesterday, but whatever, 10 years ago, and we did the double-seater Formula One car. It wasn't a Formula One car though, right? It was a.
It was an F1 car.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, we did that. It was crazy and cool.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And so we did that. So they offer this as well at MotoGP races where you can do a double bike. This sounds nuts. Like I'm already
It does sound nuts.
A car was nuts. And I can't imagine doing that on a bike, which seems very nuts.
Yeah.
And then the guy, our paddock tour guide, was telling us that the person who rode the bike, who, the Mario Andretti, who does it a lot. We didn't ride with Mario Andretti. But anyway, is Randy Mamola. Now, for those of you, it was funny because when he said that, you could see the people who knew who he was and they went, what? That guy's nuts. He's still nuts. He's an announcer now, but nuts as a rider. I don't really have quite a, I don't know who else would be a comparison for y'all, but you could see who knew and who didn't know. But he was like, he used the F word a lot in descriptions. Randy Mamola's riding style, and that they would be like, oh, this guy's got a broken leg. Take it easy, Randy. Randy didn't have an off switch. Randy was just like all out, kind of like a Marc Marquez, which still may not help people. But we're like, he doesn't. There is no like, take it easy. It's all the way, all the time. And so I was So not only did like the idea of doing a 2-seater bike scare the crap out of me, but the fact that if you walked up there and it was raining Imola, you'd be like, I'm good. You can keep my money.
Yeah.
I'd like to live. That seems like a lot, and I don't need that. And I was looking on his Facebook or on Wikipedia, and to see, because he raced before I watched, and so I wasn't quite sure where he kind of fit into things. And they describe his racing style as aggressive and spirited. I was like, that's the greatest descriptors ever. Oh, that Todd. He's aggressive and spirited. But yeah, when he told us that, I was like, I'm good.
Who knew?
I'm not sure I would ever have that experience.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Thanks. Because already getting on a bike seems scary enough.
When we did the Formula One car, when we rode in the Formula One car, we had Martin Plowman.
Yes.
He was the guy that was the driver for us. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great
very
guy.
good.
So, hey, Martin, great job.
Yeah. Yeah,
Still remember that.
I'll
Cool.
put that out there. So, yeah.
All right. Mailbag.
You've got mail.
Ryan McLeod asks this. He asks, I'm sorry, Ryan, Paul's not on this show, but I believe I do have the answers for you on this. He had a couple questions. He said, I have 2 questions, if that's all right. It's perfectly fine, Ryan. He said, I noticed during McLaren pit stop that they have engineers hold on to the halo while the tires are changed. Similarly, Mercedes had some grabbing the front wing. Might that be to stabilize the car during the pits or something else? It's a great question, and you're exactly 100% right. They're called like steadiers is what they do. So when they bring those cars in, they lift them on the jack. Those cars can tilt right or left a little bit. So what they do is they hold on to the halos there, and they stabilize the car, and they hold it to keep it plumb and straight up and down while they're putting the tires on, because if you're jamming those tires on real hard, it could tip it or whatever. So they're stabilizing that car when it's up in the air, and then they drop it. That's not all those mechanics do, though. Those 2 mechanics are also critical if there's a damaged front wing where you can't get the front jack in. These are the 2 mechanics that have the side jacks that come in and lift the car up at the side. So they really do 2 things. They're steadiers, and then they're side jackmen is what they do.
I feel like that job is what my dad raised me to do. Like, right. I often joke that my dad only agreed to have children because he realized we would be human sawhorses, and we could just hold stuff for him while he worked on it. Right?
And bring in the 3/8. Give me the 9/16.
Hold this still.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hold the
I
light
just need
there.
you to hold this halo right here while I work on it. Keep it steady.
Right.
Don't get bored. Like, don't do this, because that's not going to help. You have to be focused and hold that.
Hold the light. Hold the light. Yeah.
That's right. So human sawhorse, that's the job. I think I was raised for.
So it's a good question. I said my second question has to do with Tsunoda. Do we need to assemble a search party for him? The Tsunoda that was driving was both fast and kind to his team over the radio. The only possible explanation is Tsunoda's driving was some sort of robotic clone, and the real Tsunoda's in some sort of danger.
Is this like there's an episode of the Simpsons Halloween episodes where they realize that Bart is actually a twin.
Yeah,
and
right.
They lock the wrong twin in the attic, and the nice Bart is in the attic, and they're raising the nasty Bart. They got the wrong Bart as the real child. I think that's where this seems to me be going. But I think Tsunoda's narrative has changed, and we're just slow to pick up on it.
I think Yuki's trying to do a change. I think it's the new and improved Yukester.
Yeah, I think he's really making a concerted effort, and for sure, I think it helps that he's having a lot more success. I mean, don't we all feel that way? Like, it's a lot easier to come into work every day and smile when work doesn't suck, right?
Well, it's always good when you're kicking Dan in the growing and doing well. You know, that'll perk you up.
Exactly. So I think that helps. I think he is trying to be a kinder, friendlier person.
Agree.
I think his narrative is turned a corner, or they got the wrong Bart. It could be.
They got the wrong Bart.
And they just figured it out.
It could be the wrong Bart.
I mean, that's always possible too. But I think give Yuki a shot. I think that finally,
I say why not?
He's not giving him that material. Lancey boy, look at how serious he looks.
He looks so serious there, doesn't he?
But, you know, the facial hair. His facial hair still throws me off. Like, I don't know, Lance. Like,
I know.
I'm not here for that.
I know. It's we've talked about Gunther.
Oh no, it all went wrong.
We've talked about that. You know, what else are we going to talk about? What is there to talk about at this point?
I don't know. I did want to give a shout out that if we haven't provided enough MotoGP coverage, please go check out Jim's podcast, MotoPod. He did a lot of great paddock interviews, including with Dan's his first name. I can never remember his last name, but he's the new PR guy for MotoGP, an American. He's sort of been changing the way things going, putting things in front of the paywall. I know, sneak peek, we talked to him on Friday. He answered a lot of questions. Great guy. Hung out in turn 2 and then walked down the track a little bit. So check out his podcast. And also, if we ever find ourselves in Europe for a MotoGP race, David Emmett says hi as well. I know that we met him a couple years ago in Indy.
I did meet David Emmett.
Yeah. So he was not in Austin, but he said, if you guys ever come to Europe, let me know. So
Yeah. He was in St. Louis one time, and delightful chap, and got to spend a little time with him and talk motorcycle stuff.
Yeah, so that door's still open as well.
Some of the MotoGP guys, they thought I was an idiot because I was talking to them about many years ago. And I'm not taking a swing at them. I totally agree with them. But, I come from the F1 mentality. So I was asking them about aerodynamics. And they were like, well, no, it's motorcycles. And I'm like, yeah, but a fairing here or there and controlling airflow or the bike. And it's like, no, it's so lightweight and, horsepower and everything. It's not that big of a deal. And so it's very intriguing now to see all of the aero on these bikes, And I said weight is the killer. So if you get two drivers, one's 175 pounds and the other's 173, and the other one that's 175 has, all kinds of metal work in his legs and arms, and he's heavier and, he's a little less agile. Does that have an impact on a driver's shelf life, because weight is the killer, right? And they thought I was an idiot. But, I think in F1 terms where they're trying to remove infinitesimal amounts of weight, it
was interesting because we were talking to Jim about that. And, and his point was kind of it depends on what you want MotoGP to be, right? If you want MotoGP, like Formula One, to be the pinnacle, then aero makes sense, right? Because that's what makes it a pinnacle. It's not trying to be stock. It's not trying to be something that you're going to ride, that superbike that already exists. It's its own thing. It's supposed to be the pinnacle. And if it's a pinnacle, then that makes sense that there's aero. But much like Formula One, nobody really wants that because it's just going to make dirty air. It's just going to screw up passing. And it's just going to us old schoolers are just like, oh, God.
Well, that's easy. Then they just need to come up with DRS and HD tires. Woo!
Right. And I think, unlike Formula One, you're also making the bikes look ugly. I don't know that aero as much makes the cars look ugly in the same way that, we were joking that the Ducatis all look like little shrimp tails now, right? And then you have, the big mustache on the front of the Aprilia. It really changes the look of the bikes in a way it doesn't on a car. So I think and somebody asked Mark Marquez about that, and he was sort of like, again, paraphrasing, I don't really like it, but it's where we're going now.
Yeah. Yep. I think it is. All right. Well, that does it for this episode, folks. Huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Been great chatting with all of you. And if you like this podcast, go over to your favorite podcast player. Give us a good rating over there. You can share your opinion. Just do it at theparkforme.com and do it with decorum and civility as always. A huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters because we could not and would not do this podcast without you. You can watch us over on YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe, and the bell icon over on YouTube. And that way you'll be notified when there's new episodes over there. I also chuck the audio recordings of the podcast up over there. Also, you can go to our website, listen to the podcast because I have a Spreaker player embedded in the content, so you can do that there. All kinds of places you can watch or listen. So a huge thank you. And until next week when we come back to do this all over again in the Chinese Grand Prix with hopefully Paul in tow. He has a busy weekend coming up, so we'll see what happens. But until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. I don't feel I got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur. with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.